Fellas, we're fresh off Ulberg versus Reyes, and these are the fights to make after UFC Perth. Every prelim winner, every winner and loser from the main card into fights that I think make sense. And we'll start off with Alexia Dinera kicking off the prelims by looking impressive against Loma Boonmi. I said this in the breakdown. Her second fight in the UFC, and she's beaten an experienced Loma Boonmi. So for Alexia Dinera, I'd put her against Amanda Ribas. I want to see her against someone in the top 15, and I think Ribas is a fair step up for Alexia Dinera. I want to see her against someone in the top 15. Ribas, she's coming off a bunch of losses as well. 3-fight losing streak. Fair enough, they're all against top 10 fighters, so I think she needs to fight outside the rankings. She's lost 4 of the last 5 fights. Dinera dominated Molly McCann, looked good against Loma Boonmi. Let's give her someone in the top 15. So big step up for Alexia Dinera. Not a big step up, but a step up. I think this is a winnable fight as well for Alexia Dinera, because historically Amanda Ribas struggles with grapplers. So I think it's good to get a new name in the division, a charismatic name as well in Alexia Dinera. If she can beat Amanda Ribas, that's a massive win. You know, she's beating somebody who's main evented of this year, and she's then going to be in the top 10 after 3 fights in the UFC. So I do Dinera versus Amanda Ribas. And then for Brando Perisic, the next Tom Aspinall. No, but in all seriousness, he looks skilled for the heavyweight division. Went out there and destroyed Elisha Ellison. And like I said, he's fast, he's athletic. So for Brando Perisic, I'd put him against Ryan Spann. I think this would be a sick-ass heavyweight fight. Gets Brando Perisic close to the top 15. And it's just a guaranteed finish. You know, you've got Brando Perisic, who has a 100% finishing rate as all his wins. Just beat the fuck out of Elisha Ellison, got the finish. And Ryan Spann, I mean, he's turned into a bit of a submission artist recently, but the vast majority of his wins are by KO. He was meant to be one of the hardest hitting guys in the light heavyweight division too. So this is one of those fights where there's no way it goes the distance. And similar to what I was saying before, if Brando Perisic can beat Ryan Spann, he's beating a former ranked fighter. It gets him close to the top 15. And I think if he does beat Ryan Spann, you give him someone in the top 15. And same for Ryan Spann. He's coming off the win of Lucas Brzezinski. If he can beat one of the best heavyweight up-and-comers right now in Brando Perisic, give him someone in the top 15. So guaranteed finish, does something for the division, a step up for Brando Perisic, and a step up for Ryan Spann as well. I know he just beat Lucas Brzezinski, so this is still a step up for Ryan Spann, even though he is, he is coming off a win. So Perisic, Spann, I'd get that fight done for some sort of card. Guaranteed finish, and it does something for the division, and I think it would be a sick-ass fight too. And then for Michelle Montagu, absolutely dominated the who's she fighting again? What's her name? Luana Carolina, that's it. Dominated Luana Carolina. I'd do Michelle Montagu versus Nora Cornoli. I think this would be a sick-ass fight. A big step up for Michelle Montagu, but I think she deserves it at this point. You know, she's on this massive winning streak. Every single one of her wins outside of the UFC are by rear naked choke, and like I said, just dominated Luana Carolina in her most recent fight. Did look a bit, it did look like a bit of a victim on the feet, which is something she's going to have to improve, but grappling-wise, she's one of the best grapplers we've got in this division right now at bantamweight. And I think it makes sense if you look at the rankings as well. Nora Cornoli's at number 12. She's coming off a loss, so I think it makes sense for her to fight outside the rankings. Give Michelle Montagu 2 bantamweights going at it. It's a tough fight for Montagu, like I said, because Nora Cornoli can grapple, and she's got way better stand-up than Michelle Montagu. I think she could absolutely piece up Montagu on the feet. So it's a classic striker versus grappler. Step up for Montagu, gets her in the top 15 if she does beat Nora Cornoli, and also a big opportunity for Nora Cornoli. So I think that'd be a fun fight. I'd get that done. And then for Colby Thickness, I'd do him against Alatang Heli. I'm going to go over this quite quick. Yeah, Colby Thickness, 1-1 in the UFC. Beats Jasais Masasa, and he did look like a bit of a victim on the feet, I'm going to be honest. He was getting caught a lot on the feet. He looked really good with the grappling. I'd put him against Alatang Heli. He just fought a Damon Blackshear, and I didn't look too bad in that fight. He had pretty decent stand-up, so I think it's just a fair step up for Colby Thickness. He's facing a guy who likes to trade in the pocket. I think it would be a banger of a fight. A durable guy in Alatang Heli who could survive Damon Blackshear. It's a step up for Colby Thickness. Not too big of a step up, because I don't think he's that good to the point where he could, I don't view Colby Thickness as a prospect, you know what I mean? I think he is going to be one of these kind of guys who floats around unranked at bantamweight. So I'd do him and Alatang Heli. I think that makes sense. And then for Jamie Mullarkey, this might be a bit of a hot take. Now, this isn't what I'm going to match him against, but I don't think retirement is a bad option for Jamie Mullarkey. I mean, the guy's, 31 years old, but he looks like, the way that he's fighting is if he's like 51. He's probably 51 in terms of fighting years. He's taken so much damage over his career. But if I had to match Jamie Mullarkey, I'd do a fair fight. Him and Jai Herbert. I think these guys are some of the most evenly matched guys at 155. You put them against any elite fighter, they'll lose, but they're both good strikers. They've both got good offensive striking as well. They're both kind of, winning and losing recently. Jamie Mullarkey 2-2 in his last 4. Jai Herbert 2-2 in his last 5 with a draw as well. They've both beaten Rolando Bedoya in their most recent wins as well. England versus Australia. And to be fair, both of their performances against Rolando Bedoya were fun. I feel like when they get in the flow of things, they can both be fun fighters. So I think it would be a bit of a war to have. It's also a step up for Jai Herbert. It's a step up for Jamie Mullarkey. Maybe you get this on some sort of London card, or maybe even like a Perth pay-per-view, because they usually go to the UK into Perth early 2025, early on in the year. So yeah, Mullarkey, Jai Herbert, I think it makes sense. Two unranked guys, two unranked strikers, two guys that have a bit in common, two guys around a bit of a tricky career spot. I'd put them against each other. And then 4, Cam Ralston, absolutely massive for the middleweight division. There's a picture of him stood next to Adesanya and Carlos Ulberg, and he's pretty much the same size of Carlos Ulberg as a middleweight. This guy's a giant. I'd do Cam Ralston versus Marc-Andre Barriault. I think that's a fair step up in competition for Cam Ralston. He beat Andre Petroski, which ain't an easy guy to debut against. That's like a big step up in competition, and he finished him with ease. So I'd put him against Marc-Andre Barriault. Like I said, went out there, finished Andre Petroski with ease. Dangerous stand-up. I think the vast majority of his wins as well are by KO. And Marc-Andre Barriault, he's kind of a bit of a journeyman in the middleweight division, but he has just had that amazing fight with Shan Magomedov. Yes, he took a bit of a beating, but he absolutely smashed the face of Magomedov at some point in that fight. And Barriault's usually quite a fun fighter too. Hits pretty hard, and considering that Barriault, he's lost 4 of his last 5 fights, he needs a step down in competition. And I think Cam Ralston, who's 1-0 in the UFC, makes sense. This would be a banger. It's again one of those fights that is pretty much a guaranteed not going the distance. Marc-Andre Barriault, grindy type of fighter, hits like a truck. Cam Ralston, apparently this tall fucking giant rangy KO artist as well. You put them against each other, ain't going the distance. It's a step up for Cam Ralston. If he can beat Marc-Andre Barriault, then it's only like another win before he hits the top 15 at middleweight or get somebody in the top 15. And for Marc-Andre Barriault, it's a step down from Shan Magomedov. Still a big name, you know, not a big name, but a big prospect and a winnable fight for Marc-Andre Barriault. So I'd book this fight. Neither of them are booked, obviously, because Cam Ralston just fought. I'd get that fight done. Doesn't go the distance. And then 4, Navajo Sterling. I still don't really know how I feel about Sterling. Like, he's winning his fights. He's 3-0 in the UFC, but I don't see him as like the next big thing. I think he's moving at a very slow pace, and I'd be surprised if he ever makes the top 10, but I think it is time to give him someone in the top 15 next. I think he's earned it. 3-0 in the light heavyweight division, which is quite a shallow division. Let's give him someone in the top 15. I'd do him against Mingyang Zhang himself, the Mountain Tiger. Yeah, this is a big step up for Navajo Sterling. But it's a winnable fight after we've just saw Johnny Walker against Mingyang Zhang. This fight does intrigue me a lot because, well, you've got Navajo Sterling, obviously 3-0. Mingyang Zhang, who's once one of the biggest light heavyweight prospects, just got finished by Johnny Walker. But this fight intrigues me because Navajo Sterling has been able to outstrike everybody he's fought so far in the UFC. This tall, city kickboxer, one of the best up-and-coming kickboxers we got in this division, but isn't the most dangerous. And then you've got Zhang Mingyang, who apparently, you know, when you give him anything back, it tends to crumble according to the Johnny Walker fight, but still one of the most dangerous guys at 205. This fight does intrigue me. If Navajo Sterling can beat Mingyang Zhang, fair play to him. 4-0 in the UFC, in the top 15, beat former one of the best prospects in this division, and it's top 10 for him. And for Mingyang Zhang, it's a step down from Johnny Walker. He's fighting down in the rankings, well, fighting unranked, and Navajo Sterling. Winnable fight for both of them. Dangerous guy, technical guy, put them against each other, makes sense. 2 strikers, Navajo Sterling, Mingyang Zhang, get that on some sort of card early next year. Again, maybe the Perth card for next year, because they usually go Perth earlier on in the year. And then 4, Charlie Campbell, the main card loser. Loses to Tom Nolan, gets submitted early on. I feel like Charlie Campbell had too much confidence. He was almost like overconfident because he seemed shattered after he lost to Tom Nolan. But I do Charlie Campbell against somebody like Markel Medeiros. This is what I do next. I think this is a pretty fair matchup. I think it'll be a fun fight stylistically as well. Charlie Campbell, it was killing it in the UFC, just obviously lost to Tom Nolan. Markel Medeiros is 3-0, but none of his 3 wins are impressive. They're all pretty much cans, and he's gone to a decision with all of them, one of them being a split decision. So I don't want to rush Markel Medeiros, but I think this is fair. You've got Charlie Campbell, this dangerous offensive boxer who doesn't really have any defense in his game. Markel Medeiros, more of a technical guy, but a very crafty kind of technical striker. I think it makes sense. Winnable fight for both of them, pretty 50-50 as well. Step down for Campbell, step up for Medeiros. I think that makes sense. And then for Tom Nolan, big train, said he doesn't want to come back for the rest of 2025. Again, like I'm saying with all the Australians, get him on the Perth pay-per-view next year, which is probably going to be in February or March. I do Tom Nolan against Daniel Zeluba. I match-made this fight after Daniel Zeluba lost to Michael Johnson, and I still think this is a fight I really want to see at 155. This has potential to be like Zeluba versus Rubovics Part 2. This is like one of those fights where you put it on any card, and it's got fight of the night, fight of the year potential all over it. It'll be a fucking bang. You've got Tom Nolan, this dangerous kickboxer, very powerful, comes to have a scrap every time. You've got Daniel Zeluba. I mean, the guy's been in one of the, arguably the greatest UFC fight in history against Esteban Rubovics. Always in a banger, always in a fun striking matchup. Makes sense from rankings as well. Zeluba's lost his last 2. Tom Nolan's on a bit of a winning streak now. And I think if Tom Nolan can beat Zeluba, that's where we give him someone in the top 15. Or maybe even someone really close to the top 15. This is like the last big test for Tom Nolan. It will be a fucking scrap on whatever card you put it on. It makes sense. 2 strikers with decent submission ability. And for Daniel Zeluba, you know, you look at his last 2 losses. Lost to, obviously, Michael Johnson. There's no shame in that. Lost to Esteban Rubovics. No shame in that. You give him Tom Nolan, a fun guy, a big name. Not a big name, but, you know, a respectable name, fun guy. This would be a banger of a fight, whatever card you put it on. And then for Jake Matthews, I kind of feel for this guy, man. He submitted Neil Magny, and then the referee just said, fuck it, the fight continues, and he ends up getting submitted himself by the heightened sensation. So for Jake Matthews, I guess you're going to give him a bit of a step down in competition. I don't want to give him a complete can, though. I do him against Gunnar Nelson. I think this is a fight that makes sense. Yeah, he's just, like I said, submitted Neil Magny, and then still ends up losing the fight after Neil Magny gets a submission over him. And I've put him against Gunnar Nelson. Gunnar Nelson fights once a year, insanely inactive, just lost to Kevin Holland, what was a weird-ass fight, but before that was on a 2-fight winning streak. So this fight kind of does intrigue me. You know, Jake Matthews is a good grappler, decent striker. Jake Matthews, Gunnar Nelson, heavy jiu-jitsu guy. Stylistically quite intriguing, but it's a step down for Jake Matthews. Not against a complete can, still a respectable name. You know, Gunnar Nelson's kind of at the same level as Jake Matthews. So if Jake Matthews can beat Gunnar Nelson, I wouldn't mind seeing Jake Matthews against someone like, you know, one of the top unranked guys at 170. And then if he can beat one of those guys, give him someone in the top 10. And for Gunnar Nelson as well, you know, he just lost to Kevin Holland. I think Jake Matthews is a respectable step down in competition. So I do Matthews versus Nelson, and Neil Magny somehow finds a way to get the win again. Fate is always in Neil Magny's, you know, in Neil Magny's way. You know, ends up having that fight with Mike Mallet where he gets dominated for nearly 3 rounds. Fate lets him win. Gets submitted by Jake Matthews. Fate lets him win. So for Neil Magny, he's got 2 finishes in his last 2 fights. Fuck it, give him someone in the top 15 again. That's where he belongs. He's the best gatekeeper in this division. I'd put him against the loser of Gabriel Bonfim and Randy Brown. Yeah, Gabriel Bonfim and Randy Brown are now booked. I forgot what card it's on, but they're now booked for some sort of card coming up later on this year. And it should be a fucking banger of a fight. A great grappler, great striker. But I think whoever loses that fight should take on Neil Magny. If it's Gabriel Bonfim, I'd be really interested to see the grappling exchanges, because Magny, I think, is a massively underrated grappler. He's won 3 of his last 5, all by grapple, 3 of his last 6 by grappling, by TKO or submission. And Gabriel Bonfim's a submission artist. And Randy Brown is one of the best and most entertaining unranked strikers at 170. I'd be interested to see if he can, you know, do what Carlos Prates did and Michael Morales did and slump Magny, or if Magny can somehow, you know, hack his way to another win, get Fate on his side again and get another victory. So both of these fights intrigue me. It gets Magny not necessarily in the top 15, but definitely closer to the top 15 if he beats whoever loses this fight. So yeah, whoever loses between Bonfim or Brown, both intriguing fights for Magny, both step ups for Magny. And I think it's a reasonable step up as well, because, you know, it was a controversial win. Technically, Magny did get submitted by Jake Matthews, so for him to come back and get a victory in the way that he did, fair play to him. So Magny, I'd put him against the loser of Bonfim and Brown. Step up in competition, still a dangerous matchup. I think that makes sense. And then 4, Raymond Taveras ends up losing to Jack Jenkins, and I think for Raymond Taveras, I'd given Steve Wynn. Stephen Wynn is the guy who knocked down Muhammad Yahya like 8 times in their fight earlier on this year. I think it sets the record for the most knockdowns in UFC history, so that's that guy. So I'd put him against Raymond Taveras because it'd be a scrap. It makes sense from a perspective of the rankings. Taveras has lost his last 2, wins 1-1 in his last 2. They're both kind of fighting for their contract still, but it'll be a banger. Raymond Taveras is not the highest level fighter, not the most reliable either, because he keeps missing weight, but all of his fights are fun. He's willing to stand there and exchange in the pocket. And Stephen Wynn, like I said, I mean, the guy just knocked down and set a record on Muhammad Yahya, dropping him 8 times in a single fight. So that kind of shows the type of fighter that Steve Wynn is. So I'd book them against each other. Loser gets cut from the UFC. Winner does whatever, but regardless, it'll be a fun fight. And then for Jack Jenkins himself, I'd probably do Jack Jenkins versus Danny Silva. I think this is a really fun fight in the featherweight division as well. Jack Jenkins is usually a really fun boxer. He's one of these classic Australian boxers. Good hands. Nothing, you know, super impressive. Nothing over the top. Doesn't look like a prospect or anything, but he has got decent stand-up. And Danny Silva, a bit of a taunter in the octagon, and he has kind of had a bit of a murderer's row in his most recent fight as he took on Kevin Valejos, but classically, fun boxer, good output, great defense. He's coming off a loss to Kevin Valejos. Jenkins is coming off a win over Raymond Taveras. I think it'll be a really fun fight. 2 boxing-heavy guys, 2 good boxers as well. Jack Jenkins with good offense, Danny Silva with good defense. I think it'll be a good fight. I'd get that fight done later on, or maybe earlier on this year. And then for Ivan Erslan, just cut him from the UFC. I mean, the guy's 0-3 in the UFC, lost to Ian Cutelaba, beaten pretty comfortably by Sterling, and now he's been submitted by Jimmy Crute. Hasn't lived up to the hype at all. Isn't really UFC worthy. So Ivan Erslan, get out. You're getting cut from the UFC. And then for Jimmy Crute, I mean, the guy's had a complete career turnaround, you know, winning his last 2 fights. He's now got some momentum. So fuck it, let's give Jimmy Crute someone in the top 15. I'd do him versus Volkan Oezdemir. I think this is a fight I want to see at light heavyweight right now. Jimmy Crute is won his last 2 fights, submitted Marcin Prachnio, submitted Ivan Erslan. Yes, they're both kind of low-level light heavyweights, but he's got the momentum. He's making easy work of these guys. He's been in the top 15 before. Let's give him another opportunity at the top 15. I think it makes sense as well. You know, Volkan Oezdemir is number 9. He's coming off a loss to Carlos Ulberg. Not that that's a bad loss or anything, but he has been out for like a year as well. So I do Volkan Oezdemir versus Jimmy Crute. I think if Jimmy Crute can beat Volkan Oezdemir, well, he's back in the top 10. He went from retirement 1 year, and he's already back in the top 10. And for Volkan Oezdemir, very winnable fight for Oezdemir. You know, he's classically got decent takedown defense. Oezdemir, he hits like a truck. So big step up for Jimmy Crute, but I think he's ready, man. You know, he's been at the top before. Let's not act like he hasn't been at the top and beaten some elite guys before. He's now got the momentum back. He's displacing these not cans, but, you know, these lower level guys. So let's give him Volkan Oezdemir. Step down for Oezdemir. Big step up for Jimmy Crute. Maybe you get this some sort of like pay-per-view main card slot for the next Australian pay-per-view. So Crute, Volkan Oezdemir. It is a bit of a big step up for Jimmy Crute. We're not just giving him someone who's just joined the top 15, but like I said, Jimmy Crute's been at the top before. He's fought the top guys and he's beaten some top guys before. So I think let's give him Volkan Oezdemir. And then for Dominic Reyes, shame to see, gets knocked out by Carlos Ulberg, and the momentum has now shifted. I'd give him Alonzo Menifield. I think this is a fair step down in competition for Dominic Reyes. Yeah, he's just been knocked out by Carlos Ulberg. Probably not going to be back. Well, definitely not going to be back for the rest of this year. I'm expecting him to come back maybe earlier on next year, maybe like, I don't know, March, April time of 2026. And Alonzo Menifield, he's won his last 2 fights. Yes, they're both against the lower level fighters, but he's on a 2-fight winning streak. He's ranked number 14 in the division as well. So I don't think it's too big of a step up. So I do Menifield versus Reyes. This is a very winnable fight for Dominic Reyes. You know, very winnable fight. Easy kind of one of those fights where it's like a, you know, get the momentum back type of fight, where I can see Reyes going out there, chinning Alonzo Menifield, getting the momentum back, getting a big win, and getting back in the winning column, getting his confidence back. But for Alonzo Menifield, I mean, the guy's won his last 2 fights. He's in the top 15. He's going to want to step up in competition. Put him against Dominic Reyes, a big name, big opportunity for Menifield. So I think it makes sense. I do expect Reyes to chin Menifield, but it makes sense from a perspective of rankings. It's a step down for Reyes, step up for Menifield, so I get that fight. And then for Carlos Ulberg, there's only really one option for Carlos Ulberg, and it is a title shot next. And you've kind of got to give him a title shot next. You know, he's just gone out there, knocked out Dominic Reyes in what was kind of seen as like a, not unofficial, but like a #1 contender fight. He's on a huge win streak in the light heavyweight division. 4 ranked wins, 2 finishes out of those 4 ranked wins. Fair enough, he might have not beaten like a Roundtree or a Yuri or a Yambel Hutch. Oh, he has beaten a Yambel Hutch, but what are they, like the top 3, top 4 guys? But I say we give him a title shot now. You know, he's killing it in the UFC. And Roundtree and Yuri, yes, they're fighting next week, and that should be a banger. But they've both had their chance. We just saw Roundtree versus Alex a year ago. We've seen Yuri versus Alex twice, and he lost both of them. I want some fresh meat at the top of the light heavyweight division. So I say we give it to Carlos Ulberg, man. Beats Dominic Reyes, one of the kind of the new names in the light heavyweight division. So whoever wins that fight between Alex and Ankalaev, I want to see them against Ulberg. If Alex wins, it's fresh meat for Alex. He hasn't fought Ulberg yet. This new guy versus, I guess, an old guy in Alex, it makes sense. And then if Ankalaev wins, him and Ulberg's an interesting fight. I think Ulberg could potentially even be a stylistically bigger threat than Alex because of the grappling of Ulberg too. So I do Ulberg versus the winner of Alex and Ankalaev. I think he's earned his title shot. I wouldn't be mad if the winner of Yuri and Roundtree get the shot, but at this moment in time, I wouldn't be advocating for that. I don't mind them getting a title shot in the future, but I think next, let's give it to Carlos Ulberg. He's even said that he's willing to be the backup of whoever wins next week. So let's give it to Ulberg. He's earned his shot. 4 ranked wins, just knocked out Reyes in the first. Let's give him his title shot. But those are the fights I do for UFC Perth. Let me know if you agree, disagree with these fights, what your thoughts are. Thank you for watching.